Hello, everybody. Step here for gathering information. It's time to talk about War of the Spark. Removal spells. Removal is a key part of any limited environment and any Magic playing, really, in general. And I wanted to go over what we mean when we say removal. Normally, when you talk about removal, you mean creature removal, because creatures are what generally get the damage done in games of limited and, again, Magic in general. Damage done and games won, but it's a wild and wacky world in War of the Spark, and there are no fewer than 36 Planeswalkers. A Planeswalker in every pack, as they've been advertising. Now, not all of these are good, but most of them are at least playable, so we should talk about not only what removes creatures from the field, but what removes Planeswalkers as well. So, I have decided to break down the removal not only by color, but more by function. We're going to start with the things that remove just creatures, and then go on to Planeswalkers, and then anything, and then wipes, and we'll get there when we get there. In white, we have 3 pieces of removal that are classically white. First, an uncommon Planeswalker, the Wanderer. Her -2 exiles target creature with power 4 or greater, so a big thing. You can do that twice. Seems playable. Divine Arrow deals 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. And Gideon's Triumph has an opponent sacrifice a creature that attacked or blocked, so you could maybe pair that with removing something smaller or something more manageable, and then having your opponent forced to sacrifice their bigger threat. Now, all of that is fairly situational, we'll say. So, white does have one unconditional removal spell, and that's Wanderer's Strike. Exile target creature, then proliferate. So 5 mana, sorcery, exile target creature. This is going to be in basically all of your white limited decks. Moving on to black, we've got things that black do. Black also gets a Planeswalker, which has a -2 that destroys target creature, period. But its controller also draws 2 cards, so if you really need to deal with something, you can let your opponent draw 2 cards, or you can sack one of your little things to draw 2 cards yourselves. That seems good to me. Also in black, Sorin's Thirst deals 2 damage to target creature. Liliana's Triumph has each opponent sacrifice a creature. This all seems pretty typical, and mirrors white fairly well. And then Obnixilus's Cruelty, at instant speed, 2 and a black, instant, target creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn, and it exiles that creature if it would die. So that's your way of dealing with almost everything until it starts getting proliferated onto. Also, at Mythic Rare, there are 2 others that we want to talk about. Finale of Eternity. X black black, destroy up to 3 target creatures with toughness X or less. It's kind of a mini board wipe. We'll talk about board wipes later, but I wanted to put this one here because you have to target the things. It's not like it just gives everything -X, although if you're destroying up to 3, it's effectively everything. Also, Liliana, the Dread Horde General, she can -4 right away to have each player sacrifice 2 creatures. So that's probably going to get something good. Moving on to red, we've got Blind Blast and Cyclops Electromancer, which I put here because they're not great. They're removal-ish. I mean, Blind Blast deals 1 damage to target creature, and it can't block this turn. That's probably what you're supposed to use it for, is just to get damage through. But it'll destroy something with 1 toughness. So there's that. And Cyclops Electromancer, when it comes down, it deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of instants and sorcery cards in your graveyard. So it's completely build around. Or not build around, but you have to have cast a bunch of stuff already for it to get anything big. However, red does have some powerful removal with Jaya's Greeting. This is basically a lightning strike with upside. You pay 2 mana, get 3 damage, and scry 1. Also, This has a place in my heart, this spell. If you want to know my personal story about Jaya's Greeting, then you can join us on our stream, our daily weekday stream at 3 p.m. Eastern. We play Arena, and just ask me, what's up with Jaya's Greeting? Why do you care? And I will tell you the story. I'm not going to put it here. Finally, on to green. Green has two main ways of removing creatures. One is with fights or punches, and the other is it just hates flyers. So get those flyers out of here. Band together, up to 2 target creatures you control each deal damage equal to their power to another target creature. That seems sweet to me. So if you have a couple of things, you can take down one big thing, or if you have one big thing, it can just punch something in the face. And Forced Landing is, I think, a pretty interesting take on a plummet or a flyer hate spell. Put target creature with flying on the bottom of its owner's library. So put it 6 feet under, basically. You just get that thing out of there. And I think that's better than Destroy, because for all intents and purposes, it removes it into exile. Like, unless they have shuffle effects, they're never seeing that card again. So I think those are pretty sweet. The other typically green thing is just straight up fighting, dealing damage as though 2 things were in single combat. And we don't have just a green fight spell, but we do have 3 multicolored green fight spells. With Tulsamir, Friend of Wolves, when a wolf enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life, and that creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So he makes a wolf when he comes down, and you can just have that wolf fight something with 3 toughness and take it out. Domri's Ambush puts a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, then that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. We're starting to get into the or planeswalker area, but I wanted to put that one here because it was a fight effect. And finally, Domri, Anarch of Bolas, -2, target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. So you can do that once without plussing, and those tend to be pretty good effects. If you're in green, you should have the biggest creatures, so yeah. Moving into other multicolored spells, we've got stuff that just straight up destroys creatures, with Death Sprout for black, green, and 1, destroy target creature, and then other stuff. Enter the God Eternals, blue, black, for deal 4 damage to target creature, and other stuff. And Tyrant's Scorn. You can choose either to destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less, or other stuff. So there are some black-green and blue-black straight removal spells. And last but not least, we have a planeswalker that just straight up exiles target creature. Kaya, Bane of the Dead, and she can do that twice. So that seems highly playable to me for 3 Orzhov at uncommon. I mean, if you're in any combination of black and white, I think this is probably worth including in your deck. Now, before we go on to planeswalker removal, I want to talk about things that are removal-ish, because you may have noticed there weren't any mono-blue removal spells, and if you know anything about Magic, you'll know that that's kind of the way it goes. Blue doesn't get to just get creatures off the battlefield with the same utility that the other colors do. You kind of have to anticipate more in blue. So there's going to be some blue stuff here, but first, Nahiri, Storm of Stone. Her -X, so you can do it up to -6, deals X damage to target tapped creature. Now, the creature has to be tapped, so that's not great, but I still think this is probably playable. And then there are a group of spells that don't really do the same thing, except that they act as removal, kind of. Bonds of Passion lets you deal 2 damage to any target, so that could be a creature or a planeswalker, but you have to gain control of a creature. So And you can't target the creature that you're gaining control of. So that's highly dubious, I think. Kasmina's transmutation turns any creature into a 1/1 with no abilities. So it's not really removal, except what's a 1/1 gonna do when it used to be a Sphinx? So that's kind of like removal. That's as good as blue gets for straight on the field removal. Sort of in the same role is role reversal. Exchange control of 2 target permanents that share a permanent type. So they're supposed to be creatures, although you could exchange control of lands or artifacts or even planeswalkers if you have one that's used up. But basically, you have to have something bad and your opponent has to have something good for this card to be one that you want to cast. So it's not exactly what I'd call premium removal. Then what about Callous Dismissal? Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Again, could be any permanent, but you're letting your opponent draw that card. So removal-ish? You do get a 1/1 out of it, or a counter on your zombie army, so that's something. Finally, Dovin, Hand of Control. His -1 is until your next turn, prevent all damage that would be dealt to and dealt by target permanent an opponent controls. So most of the things that deal damage are going to be creatures. But maybe you get there, I don't know. There's a thing from Kaladesh that could deal damage, or Blasting Station, or Vance's Blasting Cannons, you know? So you could take care of one of their non-creature damage sources, but most likely it's going to be a creature. That does, however, leave them with that big creature as just a big stone wall. So that doesn't really remove it. It just makes it not a problem. Now, as I said before, there are 36 planeswalkers in this set. You're going to see them all over the place, and there might be some that you want to get rid of. So these next few spells are specifically targeting planeswalkers. The Elder Spell. Destroy any number of target planeswalkers. Choose a planeswalker you control and put 2 loyalty counters on it for each planeswalker destroyed this way. That seems good. Chandra, Fire Artisan. You can't really use her for damage, but if you keep plussing her, they're going to want to take her out, and so whenever one or more loyalty counters is removed from Chandra, like by her getting hit, she deals that much damage to target opponent or planeswalker. That seems fine, and if you get her to 7, she can -7 to deal 7 to a planeswalker, effectively killing it. Sorin, Vengeful Bloodlord, can also +2 to deal 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. Sarkhan's Catharsis can deal 5 damage to target player or planeswalker. I imagine his catharsis is that he's hitting Bolas in the face really hard. And finally, the Price of Betrayal. Remove up to 5 counters from target artifact, creature, planeswalker, or opponent. So taking counters off of creatures isn't really going to kill them, because it's not instant speed, you can't do it in the middle of combat, but taking 5 counters off of a planeswalker could effectively bin it. So these cards, I feel, are going to be targeted specifically toward planeswalkers in Limited when they're on the field. Now we're moving into premium territory. We're moving into kill anything territory. These next spells can take care of creatures, planeswalkers, sometimes even artifacts and enchantments. And that's something I haven't mentioned. I haven't added the destroy target enchantment or artifact because they're not really removal. They remove cards, but not generally the things that are killing you. So I will probably deal with some of those in the instant speed effects tomorrow, but for now, let's just carry on. Prison Realm is our premium white removal spell. It's uncommon. 2 and a white. When it enters the battlefield, exile target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls until Prison Realm leaves the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. That just seems great. That seems like, well, it seems like something that would have cost 4 mana a set ago. Moving into blue, our only real removal spell is Totally Lost, and I do insist this is actually a removal spell. Unlike a bounce spell that lets your opponent draw that thing, Totally Lost puts target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. That means that while they're drawing the same thing that might be big and nasty and terrible, they have to lose whatever that resource is for the turn and draw it, so they're not drawing something else next turn. And then they have to cast it, and blue could just decide to counter it when it comes back down. Not premium, but definitely legitimate removal. Now, black by itself only has one thing that really blows up whatever you want, and I wanted to pair it here. Spark Harvest and Heartfire are really interesting cards to look at side by side because it really shows you the strengths and weaknesses of each of those colors. Spark Harvest is black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or pay 3 and a black. So it could be 5 mana for destroy target creature or planeswalker, or you can sacrifice a creature to cast it. And if you've got spare creatures that you don't care about, then this seems very powerful. Heartfire, on the other hand, is 1 in a red for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you have to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. So there's no two ways about it. You just have to have something to sacrifice if you're going to play Heartfire. But it deals 4 damage to any target. That could be your opponent's creatures. It could be your opponent's planeswalkers, or it could be your opponent's face. So this will remove pretty much anything and is a surefire include for me. Moving on to other things in red. Red only really had the one good burn to creatures, but we've got some stuff that'll burn just about anything here. Chandra's Pyrohelix deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets for 2 mana. So you can target 2 things with 1 damage, 1 thing with 2 damage. It seems pretty good to me. It seems like a very versatile shock. Chandra's Triumph deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. And if you control a Chandra planeswalker, which good luck with that, it deals 5 to that permanent instead for 2 mana. Wow, that seems good. Otherwise, it's just another version of Lightning Bolt. It's like, or Lightning Strike. It's kind of like Chandra and Jaya are facing off. Anything you could do, I can do better. Speaking of Jaya, Venerable Fire Mage, 4 and a red. Her -2, which she can do twice, is she deals 2 damage to any target, and her static reads, if another red source, so unfortunately not her, but if another red source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals that much damage +1 to that permanent or player instead. As an aside, I really love the flavor on this card because she's basically teaching you how to fire better. Yeah. Moving into multicolored, we have a couple of other things that deal some damage. Ral's Outburst for 2 blue-red deals 3 damage to any target, and you get to do other stuff. But 3 damage will kill a bunch of good things. Speaking of 3 damage, Oath of Kaya also deals 3 damage to any target. That's at rare, though, and Ral's Outburst are at uncommon. Again, I'm only worried about the fact that so far we've seen a bunch of stuff that deals 2, 3 damage. Only a couple of things that deal 4 damage or more. But we do have a lot of destroy effects as well. And speaking of just kill anything, we have 3 options that all look like they just kind of have options. Casualties of War at rare is kind of expensive, 2 black, black, green, green. But you can choose any number of things to destroy. You could destroy an artifact, a creature, enchantment, a land, a planeswalker, or why not all of them? The answer to why not all of them is maybe you don't have targets for all of them. Angrath's Rampage at uncommon is similar, although very reasonably priced at 2 mana. Choose one. Target player sacrifices an artifact, sacrifices a creature, or sacrifices a planeswalker. And though they get to choose what to sacrifice, you get to choose what they're choosing to sacrifice. Meaning, if you say they sacrifice a creature, they can't decide to sacrifice their irrelevant planeswalker, and vice versa. D-Spark is the third multicolored spell on this list, and it's just white-black, instant, exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. So again, that 4 or greater clause. I don't see any reason that this shouldn't just be straight white. Maybe target permanent. If it was creature, it would definitely be just white. Now, take a breath, because the big ones are coming. We've got a pair of dragons. Nicol Bolas, Dragon God, is Grixis, as he should be. Blue, black, 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 red, for a legendary planeswalker Bolas, and he has all sorts of things, including all the other loyalty abilities of all other planeswalkers on the battlefield. But what I really wanted to talk about was Bolas as removal. His -3, which he can do as soon as he comes down, is destroy target creature or planeswalker. So that's just a straight removal spell. It's very difficult to cast this Nicol Bolas, though, and you wouldn't want to do that right away unless you can protect him, or unless you really needed to get something off the field. His brother, Ugin the Ineffable, is a 6 mana, so 1 more, but in whatever kind of mana orientation you care for. His -3 is destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. So he can destroy anything as long as it has a color. Similar, but very different. And finally, Gideon Blackblade is also here because his -6 is exile target non-land permanent, although he can't do it right away. You've got to plus him a couple of times before getting Gideon off. Finally, last but not least, let's talk about the board wipes. There are 7 things in this set that I would consider board wipes at rare. We already talked about one that had that potential, and I know Massacre Girl isn't really a board wipe unless you're really set up for it, but Single Combat, Widespread Brutality, Blast Zone, Ravnica at War, Solar Blaze, and Time Wipe are all different variations of the board wipe. I wouldn't worry too much about them because they are at rare, but if you think that your opponent might be holding back and is in one of these colors, then you might want to think about the fact that they might have a board wipe. So that's the removal for War of the Spark. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about the instant speed effects, some of which is going to be removal. So you'll see some of these cards tomorrow, and we'll maybe go into further detail. Anyway, that's it for me. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, how we can improve, how we can do better. And please, if you want more from us, check out everything we do here on the channel, our other videos. Come join us in our stream, 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. We play Magic the Gathering Arena. I play other games on Game-A-Dare. Tams, the girl in real life, plays EverQuest on stream, 10 a.m. Eastern, so check her out. And if you want to help us keep doing what we do, you could always buy us a coffee or a tea in the link down below to help support the channel. Thanks for watching, and please come back tomorrow for part 3.